as President of the United States.
Maybe people are more used to hearing or seeing people lying because we have the example over the Atlantic of President Trump. But I'm not even sure whether he knows that he's lying or not. I mean, I've always taken the view that it is deliberate. But I'm not too sure whether with Trump, whether he realises what he's saying is the truth or not. I think he's almost gone past it. I'm not a psychologist, but I think it would be very interesting to have somebody look at the state of mind which produces the effects that President Trump does.
And there is just so much information around. And you could see this with the sort of confidence of, say, the way Donald Trump uses his lies to say, well, this truth is as good as any other truth. This is my truth. This could be fake news. You sort it out.
This is fake news put out by the media.
Well, when you take the row over Trump's inauguration, that very much was an early preview of what we're about to see with the presidency itself. A constant rolling battle with the media in which those media rows would distract from the substance of what was happening.
Trump's associates actually doctored the photos, cropped them, so that they only showed the thick crowds at one end of the square, whereas Obama had filled the square. So that, you know, there's incontrovertible documentary evidence. And still, Donald Trump continued to insist that he'd drawn a bigger crowd.
And so he was able to use the bully pulpit of the presidency to assert that actually, as his press secretary ended up telling reporters, it had been the largest audience ever, period.
He knows that his hardcore, his core supporters are not going to worry really whether it's true or not, and that they will accept at face value anything he says, specifically this.
I suppose one of the later ones was on the state visit when he claimed that if we had a trade deal with America, with the United States, then the National Health Service would be included. The very next day he said, oh no, it wouldn't be. Now, is that a lie or what is it? I mean, it gets almost beyond belief.
In fact, and I can't judge the truth of this, of course, but the Washington Post and other US journalists have tried to count the number of lies that they claim that Donald Trump has told since he took office. And the figure in April this year, 2019, was 10,000.
I know some people will compare President Trump with Boris Johnson in as much as they appear to say some contradictory things. I think there is a very vast difference between them, even though they appear to be friends. I think the trouble with Boris is that he gets carried away in a fit of exuberance and says something which perhaps he doesn't really mean and will retract or amend at a later stage. Now, whether that is lying, I think, is a grey area.
Like some slumbering giant, we are going to rise and ping off the guy ropes of self-doubt.
And this goes right back and perhaps is to some extent provable to his record when he was the Daily Telegraph correspondent in Brussels, and he made up stories. He made up ludicrous stories about the bureaucracy of the European Union and their crazy pronouncements. Some of these stories, they weren't all attributed to Johnson, but were later repeated, particularly in the Daily Mail, about the idea that bananas would have to be straightened, that cows would have to wear Pampers, and that Bombay Mix would no longer be allowed to be called Bombay Mix because it was a British imperial name, would have to be renamed. This was all nonsense.
Well, certainly cynicism is very deeply embedded in the national psyche, and voters elsewhere around the world feel this, like in the US, when it's a distrust not just of the political class, but also of establishment figures, officials. And so this is why you see the BBC has been widely distrusted by some. Even I, as part of the Telegraph, will be distrusted by some people on Twitter and social media. This is why you have people going to alternative media outlets. They describe and decry the MSM, the mainstream media, for peddling what they say is fake news, establishment narratives.
The question is that the amendment be agreed to. As many as are of that opinion will say content. Content. Contrary, not content. Lying is stigmatised, I think, rightly, because it sows distrust. How can you rely on somebody if they're not telling you the truth? And so I think consistent lying, as I say, it unsettles people, it destroys integrity and trustworthiness in the system. So I think if it went on for too much, you could start to degrade the entire system. And I think that is why it's so important.
Get more from the Open University. Check out the links on screen now.